Welcome, fans, to a very special live edition of the Cheapy Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and have a very special guest today, a man that so many fans are fond of his work from truly the golden age of wrestling, a distinguished voice and presence on WWF TV. And I would be, of course, talking about Mr. Sean Mooney. Sean, thank you so much for coming on today.
All right. Hey, Jack, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on. And hello, everybody out there.
Wanted to start off with showing some of the good stuff that you have there. Is this your first figure that is now available for the fans to purchase?
Yes, Jack, this thing has been 30 years plus in the making.
Wow.
I never got an action figure when I was with the WWF back in the day. They had action figures out, of course, with superstars, but they hadn't really started doing any with the announce team until after I left. And then, of course, Gene and Bobby and everybody got one. So, it has been a long time. And I was approached by Hastel Toy, which, does some great work. The combination of the company is Hasbro, Hastel is Mattel, together. And Mitch, who runs the place, has done a great job representing a lot of these great professional wrestlers that never got action figures. And he's built up quite a stable of wonderful personalities. And for whatever reason, he thought that I might add something to that collection. And he got in touch with me about a year ago, and that whole process started. And they were just wonderful in the way they did it, keeping me abreast the whole time of what they were doing. They sent me prototypes and 3D images of everything as it went along. And it just came out fantastic. I just got a box of them a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't be happier with the way it came out. Really, it was, I've got one right here, as a matter of fact. And let's see, there it is right there.
That's nice.
And for folks that were big fans of the event center back, as you mentioned, during the greatest era of wrestling, as far as I'm concerned, I'm of course biased, but the detail on this is pretty phenomenal. They have, the blue blazer, which I wore all the time, and then had it was the WWF logo. Now they've put the gimmicks logo, but the same style that they had back then. And right down to the tie, the tie that I wore was a WWF tie. It had WWF stitched into the tie. And, of course, we wore the khakis and everything. And we had different colored blazers back then. And Vince loved having us wear every color of the rainbow. They had cranberry and gray. But I was always, the newsman of the group. And I always thought that the blue blazer really kind of set the tone when I got in front of that camera. So I usually wore the blue blazer. And I just think they did a great job. I hope folks who... I'm a rare collection because there's not a whole lot of them, and I don't know about the call for them, but people that would like to get one, you can go to the website, which is hasteltoy.com, and that's 2 T's, HASTTEL, toy.com. And right there on the page, right there in the front is the collection. They've got me on there, and I think they have 6 new ones just out, and Lord Alfred Hayes, his lordship, as you know,
nice.
My great colleague and wonderful friend. They also put one out for his lordship, so you can get both of us. And I think they also sell them as a collection with all of them. But couldn't be happier with it, Jack.
Yeah, that's tremendous. We'll make sure and restate the address where the folks can find that, and your upcoming initiatives and events that you have in the near future. But I wanted to start off, and we're of course going to talk about the event center and the credibility that you led the product through your presentation there. You're very, as you stated, that news presentation and how that bled over to the product in general really added to it. And I think it's missed today. But growing up, were you a fan of the business, or did you have an awareness thereof?
No, that's a question I get asked all the time. And I grew up out in Tucson, Arizona, And at that time, me growing up, it wasn't a real big city. We didn't get a lot. We did get some wrestling outfits come through, but we didn't really have much. So I wasn't exposed to it at all, really, growing up. And I didn't become aware of all of it until I actually moved to New York City to go to work for Major League Baseball productions in the early 80s. And of course, that's when rock and wrestling hit and everything started to take off for the World Wrestling Federation, which it was at the time. And, of course, the world was going crazy then with it because you had a lot of these people from other forms of entertainment getting involved. And so, I was in New York City, and of course, that's where a lot of it was taking place. So I was certainly aware of it, but the opportunity came up just really out of the blue. I was working as a producer and also did some talent work because, as I've talked about, that's when cable was really taking off. So there was a lot of opportunity for programming, and Major League Baseball Productions, who I work for, was looking to also take advantage of that. And so we were doing all kinds of programming. So I got a chance to be in front of the camera and jumped. A show we did was called Light Moments in Sports. They were trying to branch out and do other sports, and they came up with one of the first blooper shows that, because a lot of that was going around, but nobody had really put it together in a show. And Joe Namath was the host of it. We got him to do the show. And then I was a producer / correspondent. And I would go out and do all of these crazy stories with, offbeat sports. And one of the stories I did, I went to the Monster Factory in New Jersey, which was a very well-known training ground for professional wrestlers in New Jersey and people getting into the business. And I went and did a story there as the roving correspondent who is stupid enough to step into the ring with professional wrestlers, and they, of course, take full advantage of destroying me. And I had a kind of a dry sense of humor, delivery, and that kind of thing. And I take it all and somehow walk away with my wits about me. And they saw it up in Stanford. It was a syndicated program, and I got a call to come up and do an audition for an announcer. Came right out of the blue. The only reason I got it because I knew somebody who had gone to work for them, who I'd worked with in New York, and he told them that he knew me. And Vince said, "Well, get in touch with him and get him up here." And next thing I know, a couple of weeks after that, I'm up there auditioning, and 2 weeks after that, they offered me a job. So I didn't certainly follow the path of what led most people to the ring, but maybe that's what made me stand out and made me different. Because I remember going up there, took the train from New York City and thinking, I got nothing to lose here. If anything, it's just going to be a great opportunity to try out for something like this. And so I don't think I really was nervous or worked up about it. I went out and just threw everything I had out there. Did the sell me the broom bit, as I'm sure many have heard. Bruce tells that story, and it's true. I know Eric Bischoff went through the same process when he auditioned there. And so it was quite an experience. I remember leaving there thinking, well, we'll see. And they didn't have me come back for a second audition. The guy called me and said, "Vince wants you to come work for him." So it just was magic, a lucky, unbelievable opportunity in life that comes along, and I was smart enough to grab it.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk a little bit more about that audition process in a second, but I was always curious, given the fact that you had that in terms of the professional wrestling landscape at the time, you had a no nonsense sort of approach to a completely sometimes wacky environment, even outside of the event center. You've got these larger than life characters, etc., some of which we'll talk about. But when you were looking to do this, what skills did you bring from news that you or other media that you found transferable? And was it a conscious thing in your mind that you were just going to play it the way that you were going to play it, or did you feel any kind of pressure to be the stereotypical announcer, so to speak?
Well, Vince had something particular in mind, and people have asked me before, what do you think Vince saw in you? And I think that he saw me being somebody who could legitimize what was going on. And I remember him telling me early on when I started doing this, and especially with the event center, because that was really my first assignment. And he said, I want you to approach this just like you were doing a sports event. If you were Bob Costas or one of these guys, that's who I want you to be. You're in the event center. You're at the mecca, the center of what we do. And when anything big comes up, there's an announcement, you're the guy we're going to go to. And that was always very important to him. And also to be this observer, a bit of, maybe look like I came from the outside, but that I, took this seriously, found it very legitimate, and I was going to report the way I saw it. And I always kept that in my mind. That was always my delivery. That didn't mean that I couldn't have a sense of humor. It didn't mean I couldn't, play with words and have a good time doing it. But at the same time, and they were very, very adamant about them not making me a part of the action or what was going on. I was the legitimate journalist that was covering this. So you would never see the guys grab me and rough me up or try and make me look silly. That was really important to Vince that not happen. I couldn't lose credibility. And from my viewpoint and from what I think people took from the event center and beyond was that it worked. It did.
Yeah, and one of the the aspects of it that fans have speculated about was you stood out by being that journalist type of individual. Did you watch any sort of tapes of guys announcers in the past and take anything for it? One fan specifically asked if you were aware of Gordon Soley, and not that you did color, but that he really approached it as a very legitimate exercise. Any of those guys, when you were preparing, influence you, or did you look at?
Not really. I looked at it from more of, I was trying, when I would envision what I felt they wanted me to do, I looked at it more from, the people that were big sports personalities at the time, covering everything from baseball to, and I'd had that experience working with Major League Baseball productions, but also had seen people that, like I mentioned, people like Bob Costas and, these other, Jim Lampley and those kind of guys. That's what I kind of envisioned that I wanted to bring, and I take nothing away from those legendary announcers, people you mentioned, Gordon Soley and, other people like that, but they were wrestling announcers. That was the old school, the guy with the stick mic and, and it was, so to me, it was very different. And Vince wanted it to be different. He wanted that network type feel to it, as he did with our events as well. If you look at the early stuff, even before the first WrestleMania, they started to evolve. Those arena shows began where you'd have a hard camera, maybe another one, so that didn't cross the line into the ring. They had the ring in the center with the lights on the squared circle there, and the arena completely dark. You didn't see the fans. Well, they had the vision of, why not see these fans? Let's see how they react to what they see in the ring. It changed the entire dynamic of it once you saw how people reacted to things happening. It wasn't as the old days when you have a boxing match, and the lights were on the ring. They're on the center of these guys punching back and forth. You didn't see what the people, they didn't take crowd shots. Well, Vince started doing that. They lit up the arenas. And then they started putting cameras down at ringside, right there, up on the apron, shooting in. Guys going right into the camera. It just brought you right into it. So they were visionaries with not just, with Vince, but the team that he put together. And he also realized about that time, and I was one of those people, he started bringing people in from the outside. He knew that he was never going to move this product into the next stratosphere until he had people that could elevate the production. So he started getting people who necessarily didn't have wrestling backgrounds. They didn't, they had people. He brought in people from the network, camera people from the network, producers from different production facilities who had produced tons of television shows and brought that to professional wrestling. Well, as you can imagine, it was a collision of cultures where you had old school and then these new people moving in. A lot of people from the old school didn't like it. They didn't like the idea of these people coming in. I mean, the business, especially back then, was very closed. They spoke carny. You didn't open up and talk about what was going on in these matches. My God, no. And for me, I was one of those outsiders. It took me a solid year before I was accepted in any way. And thank God for people like Lord Alfred Hayes and Gorilla Monsoon, who took me under their wings, literally. I mean, they did, and taught me the ropes, literally. Told me how to handle things, how to be around these guys, and it really helped me because I would have never survived that first year. It was brutal, and it was, as I have said many times, it was the Old West. It was a Wild West, where when you had a beef with somebody, if there's something going on in the ring, they either settled it there because it became a shoot, or they took care of it backstage. And there was many times I know that I would be back there and you'd hear this riot in the locker room because the guy didn't do what he was supposed to do. And he wasn't going to do it the next time. So it was a crazy world to be a part of, but it was pretty damned exciting. I'll tell you that, especially for somebody like me and where I came from. Yeah.
Wanted to, of course, all of your, the company at the time and for many, many years was centered on Vince McMahon and his vision. And we've heard about how people that are brought into the company for non-wrestling roles, some of them are treated, and a lot of the fans have asked if you had any memorable interactions with Vince, positive or negative. That's part one of the question. And second of all, your thoughts on a company now. Well, it's not the same company, but an entity without Vince McMahon at the helm.
Wow, that's a lot of ground to cover there, Jack. That's for sure. Vince was a sometimes very difficult person to be around. Other times he was wonderful. He was certainly patient with me when I first got there, as you can imagine, as not being very green, even to the broadcasting business. I hadn't done a whole lot. Most of the stuff I'd done had been basically with one camera out in the field or something. And here I was brought into this world where it was all this studio work. And then suddenly you're being thrown out there and into an arena and doing a live interview or doing something backstage. And, it took a little while before they put me in that situation. But even doing the event center, I was awful. And I've told the story before that my mentor, the person that oversaw the event center, was Howard Finkel. Howard was a ring announcer. He was used to projecting. So here I'm in a studio and he's having me basically scream, welcome to the event. I mean, it was just like I was doing a card or something or announcing a match. And I finally told him, Howard, first of all, my voice is not going to last. And I would see the tapes and it was awful. And so finally I just said, can I try it my way? And I think that in a sense, Howard was relieved. He didn't know what to do with me. We were just trying to get these markets done. And I was just thrown into the fire. And immediately, if you recall back then, they were already doing a lot of events around the country. So they had to get me up to speed because Gene was done with it. He wasn't going, before that, he had to do all of these at the arena. So once I said, just let me try it. And I did. And it took a little bit, but then I got my rhythm and my style and went from there, and everything changed at that point. And, that was when it really, things turned around. But Vince was, it's amazing because you hear the stories now where he would walk around the arena and got the headset and he's barking into the guys doing the live commentary. For the most part, he left me alone because there was enough going on too. And he would certainly check in if there was something that he didn't like, but he was very good with me. And I remember one time I can't remember, Kerwin Silfies was the great director they had for decades. And it was before an event we were doing. I remember if it was a pay-per-view or whatever it was, but I was supposed to go down and do this promo in the cage. And Vince told me like 3 different things to say and said, go get down there and get this thing done. We got to think. I'm like, so I go down there and I keep screwing up. And I hear Kerwin gets in because I've got an earpiece in. He said, Vince is coming down. And I'm like, oh, shit, oh no. And I see him come down in the arena and he comes down to the thing and I think he's going to rip my head off. And he says, pal, you got this. I got you to say 3 things. Say this, it's a cage match, and it's not going to end well or something. And just the fact that he did that just made me feel, I just relaxed a bit, and I did it. But it could be completely on the other side too. There we had our other, as I'd been there after a little bit, where he would just be, for whatever reason, he would go off about something. And so it was kind of a love-hate, but I have never not been grateful for the opportunity that he gave me along the way, because really, I had no business being there at first. He saw something in me. And after I left there, and, it was my choice. I regret that decision to this day. I wish I would have stayed longer. But, people, especially after that, everything was going on with the steroid trial and all the other stuff that happened. And since then, and people try and get you on and try to get me to trash him and talk bad about the company. I've never done that ever, because I have nothing but gratitude for the opportunities and the life lessons and the skills that place gave me. So is he a perfect human being, a wonderful, did he not do sometimes head scratching things and pissed me off and all that? Sure. But overall, I owe him a career. So, people can say what they will, but I don't know of all the other personal stuff that went on and whatever, but from my viewpoint in my life, I'm grateful that he came into my life and gave me the chances that he did.
Do you see it as the WWE now as they seem to be making billions of dollars, and they just came off the most successful Royal Rumble, but creatively and perhaps this is just the old school fan speaking here, it doesn't seem to be the same. As polarizing a figure as Vince McMahon is, he's really the reason we're having this discussion today. It doesn't seem to be the same sort of company in terms of that product. Do you think ultimately that business will suffer without his vision?
I don't think so. I think that at the time when all this happened, if there wasn't the Vince McMahon and his vision and what he did for this business, we might still be talking about territories that are still out there, and it would have people running different parts of the country with professional wrestling. If there wasn't if he didn't see what Hulk Hogan was capable of and what he could do with him, nothing would have ever happened. It wouldn't have grown to what it did become. But like everything else, it evolves. I talked about how the business was back then. Well, naturally, things are going to evolve as the years go on, and it grows, and its popularity continues to increase, and you bring in all these other different entities, you expand. It was inevitable, and you see companies all the time. Founders of corporations get pushed out eventually because that industry outgrows them. And so it was inevitable at some point, whether he was going to be pushed out or he would just retire, it's going to change. And Endeavor that's come in and taken over this company, well, it seems though at this point they're smart enough to leave the people who know the business at it. And at least for right now, I don't know if it's ever been more successful. I know the stock just hit its highest peak ever. Will it continue? I don't know. But this business, it goes up and down, and it's a different business now. The guys, the personalities, and of course I'm biased because I remember those days and where these guys came from and how hard they had to work to get there. They spent the first half of their careers, every damn one of them, with people doubting them and telling them you're crazy and why are you trying to do this business, and earning nothing and being on the road 7 days a week, 200 and something days a year, not seeing your family, traveling from one hotel to the next and it was city to the next and trying to find a place to work out and then, go into the ring and get the hell beat out of you. So it was a different business completely back then. Is it better the way it is now? No, I don't know. It's different because now most of the guys that are stepping into that ring have either been a D1 athlete or succeeded somewhere else athletically. And it's not the same road they travel by any means. So I think that what they miss is that life experience that these guys brought to their promos and to their storylines. And, but they're still packing arenas. They're still putting 70, 80,000 people into a stadium. So it's just supply and demand. And if you're not giving somebody something they want to see, they don't come see it. So, that's my feeling on it now. Now I miss those days because it was, completely different. Like I said, there was a character and all kinds of background to it, but that's the entertainment industry.
Yeah, most definitely. You make some very valid points. They're making more money than ever before, so the rest of it's somewhat theoretical. You touched on Hulk Hogan, and you were right there in that Hogan era, the golden era, whatever nomenclature you want to put around it. Wanted to ask you what your relationship was working with him, and given the fact that he was such a larger than life character. And second part of the question, how do you feel about the way that he's been, I won't say embraced, but the controversy at the Raw debut where he was booed, and there doesn't seem to be the same amount of, sadly, in my view, the same amount of love for such a legend.
Yeah. Well, my regret when I went to work with the WWF back then was that I didn't come along earlier before Terry became this unbelievable personality, famous celebrity, crossing all levels of entertainment, because I would have probably had the opportunity to get to know him better. Gene was his guy. He brought Gene along with him, and they had, they were magic together, the two of them. So I didn't get as many opportunities to work with him. But I did probably hundreds of interviews with him during my time there. And it was always great. Never had an issue with him. I just wish I would have had an opportunity to really have been closer to him. But at that point, really, he was being brought to the arenas and limousines, doing his match, and then being on his way because he had something else he was going to. And I do tell the one story, the one when I first went to work for the WWF, when I went to the Hamilton, where the TV studios are, and I was kind of going back and forth. I was still living in New York City, and I would take the train up, and then they put me up in a hotel. And there was one edit room in that place, called it Edit One. Kevin Dunn was just a producer there. He produced the shows. And I was in Edit One day waiting to go and do something in the studio, and Hulk was there. And they had a separate area over there that had a couch, and I had put my bag that was over there. And he came in, and Kevin said, this is Sean Mooney, our new announcer. And he kind of looked over him and he goes like, yeah. He goes, yeah, how long you been here? I said, I just started last week. I'm just getting started. And he goes, yeah, well, don't unpack.
Nice.
Yeah. And it wasn't a mean thing. It kind of made me real, okay, this ain't coming easy. Like everything you had to earn there. They wanted to see what you were made of, what your metal was. And that was my first real idea of, okay, it's going to come. You gotta be able to see what you got. And, from that point though, everything I stuck around. So, it got a lot better with him, but it was like, then let's see what you got. And so that was part of it, but, always had a lot of great respect for him. And I will go on forever to say that there's nobody who's more responsible for what has happened to professional wrestling than Hulk Hogan. Whatever you want to say about him, he is it. He changed the entire landscape. He changed everything. It made it mainstream. So, as far as what has happened recently, I don't, that stuff he's endured before. I mean, there's been other controversies surrounding him. I think maybe this time around, it might have something to do that he got a little political. And as we all know, no matter what you have to say, half of the people don't agree with you. So that's what I think some of it might have been attached to, because he did take the stage pretty much during this last election. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I don't know. Is it as far as professional wrestling goes? I thought we'd kind of gotten through all the other issues that people had with the Hulkster. But of course, you never know. I mean, they've booed The Rock before. So I think he's going to be okay.
Fan is asking here an interesting question. Will you say yes if they called you for Saturday night main event? Or I guess we could extrapolate that to any other broadcasting duties.
Oh yeah, I mean they have brought me back. I won't say a ton, but I mean they've brought me back several times to do stuff. I've done a couple of collection pieces for them, and did one of the pre-shows for the Raw celebrations, and I would love to be a part of it. I'm pretty much, it's just me. It's me and Jesse are pretty much the only ones left from that broadcast team. But I've seen what they're doing now with Saturday night's main event. They basically put the guys in the crowd. So I don't know. Maybe might be fun to be there. Might get a little pop from people who remember the event center. They brought me back for the Raw, and I interviewed Daniel Bryan backstage, and that was a lot of fun. So, I would definitely love to be a part of it. I also get asked, do I think I'm going to get inducted into the Hall of Fame? And I have to tell you, I don't think I'm going to get that phone call, but it would be wonderful. But it's not like I'm looking at the phone in the morning to see if Triple H has left something on my voicemail. But, as I've said many times, I celebrate that part of my life. It was one of the greatest times As I say, I wish I would have stuck around longer. I had other ideas at the time, but it was a wonderful time of my life. And, anytime I can step in, I'm looking forward to going to the event in Manchester this week. It's For the Love of Wrestling, because not only will it be great to be back in the UK, which I haven't been there in a long time, and the fans in the United Kingdom are always so great to me. I still get mail from people all this time later, because they just cherish those times, and so I'm really looking forward to that. But it's part of my life that I've come to really appreciate, because I understand it now. Early on, I didn't. People would try and track me down, and I'm like, what? Why? I was just one of the announcers. But now I understand that it was a great period of a lot of people's lives. And when they see people that, so it's like a favorite show you had, and you were one of the parts in this show, and it takes you back. And a lot of them have memories of, they were kids, and it was when they saw wrestling, it made them happy. They had it gave them something to have in common with their dad that bonded them together to go to these events, and they remember that. So I'm happy to be a part of that. I love that when I hear stories of people telling me, and I heard your voice on a video I was watching on YouTube, and it just took me back. That makes me feel really good. It does.
Yeah, nostalgia is a powerful thing for sure. One of the fans sent a question about, I don't know if you remember this, you probably do, but with WWE becoming an even larger YouTube presence with their Vault channel, a fan saw a deal that you did on a golf course with Bobby the Brain and Mean Gene. And my God, I watched that recently too, and that's some comedy gold. Wanted to ask you about that particular. Were there cocktails involved? Was that a fun shoot? And your favorite memory of working with the late great Bobby the Brain?
Oh God, that was one of my favorite shoots. We did that in Stamford, Connecticut, where we they still have the headquarters there, and went to one of the local golf courses and basically shut it down for the day with Bobby and Gene playing golf, and they had me covering it, which was hilarious because I'm in my full gear. I've got, the blazer and everything. And I remember they found this, 100-foot cable. I mean, we didn't have wireless mics back then. And the whole gimmick was that I'm covering the golf course and I have this long microphone cord, and I'm doing the golf voice, he's about 20 yards out, and they, people think that we scripted things, or you don't do that with Bobby Heenan or Gene Okerlund. So it would just be, let's set up the premise. Gene's hit one into the rough, go with Bobby. And I can't remember how many times I fell down on that golf course from laughing at these two and the banter that would go on between them. And of course, when it was over, there were a few cocktails. We went to the clubhouse, and I didn't get to see them all together that often, but that was one of those nights that we had a great time. And any chance I had the opportunity, any opportunity I had to work with Bobby, I seized it, because I love being a straight man. That was my job. And I felt that when I did get to work with him, it worked pretty well. We did prime time together with the live audience, which was just a ball. And of course, Gene too. Gene, I love Gene. Gene took care of me. God, that guy was so gracious from the very beginning, and took really good care of me. All of those guys. Gorilla Monsoon, loved him to death. And Lord Alfred Hayes, the same. And I was so fortunate, because it could have been a completely different story. in a world like that. And I was well taken care of by those guys.
This is something I was going to kind of ask you in an indirected sort of way. Well, not if you were offended, but when Perfect would yell, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig in the interviews would yell, "Shut up, Mooney." How did that? Was that I take it was just an on the fly thing? And
Oh
and
yeah.
do you have any specific memories of working with Kurt?
Oh, I loved Kurt. And first of all, people say, were you offended? That shut up, Mooney. I loved it. If you know the business, when somebody is that's what you call putting you over. It's the same thing when they would throw to me and Bobby would say, "Who?" I mean, till this day, you look at when people mention me and they'll say Sean Mooney and they'll say, "Who?" Well, I know maybe some are saying who, but Bobby would say that. And it's how many decades later now is this that people remember that? So I loved it when they put me over, and Bobby, when they had me on primetime doing the event center, strictly to let Bobby destroy me. Right. And I would just sit there and take it and try and come back, which was impossible. And so, yeah, I loved it. And I really loved Kurt. Kurt was so funny and such a really good guy. Always was great to me in interviews. And when you got people like that, you know that you can't fail when you're doing an interview with somebody like him. But he loved to, I'm sure people he loved the ribs, and genuinely funny. I mean, he could do some stuff. He did some things some people maybe crossed the line a little bit, but he would do a lot of fun things with me, doing interviews. And he used to chew the gum. And I remember I did a pay-per-view one time where he had put his arm around me, and I didn't think anything of it. And then at the end of the night, I got a wad of gum that's been sitting on my shoulder the entire time that nobody pointed out, or I don't know. He would do things where he would, like during an interview, if there was 3 or 4 people, he loved to mess with me. So, because, I had to get the mic over to people, and he would act like he didn't know which way to move, or, and that was just him. And besides the performer he was in the ring, and his dad, Larry the Axe, for some reason liked me a lot. He used to come into the events, and he would always tell me, "You're doing a great job." And for somebody who was really old school and from that generation to tell me, "We like what you're doing," was just to the moon for me. And so that was, for the most part, the guys were just tremendous to me. There was a few that were rough, but for the most part, it was always a great experience. And Kurt Hennig was right there on top, and same with someone like Randy Savage was also, I loved working with him. And there's, a long list, but he was awesome. And his loss way too soon, and such a tragedy, because, I think he had a lot left.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
Yeah.
In terms of characters that we get asked about a lot, for those that work with him, right at the top of the list, around with Hogan, is the Ultimate Warrior, and talk about polarizing figure, depending on seems like who you talk to. People love him, people hate him.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be an in between. So wanted to ask what your experience was like working with Warrior.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, you get people who say they didn't like him, and there are a lot of reasons that were valid for that. But I think that you have to look deeper into Jim Hellwig to really understand him. I got to spend a lot of time with Warrior, because we would do a lot of appearances together where we'd go at these fan fests and stuff like that, and sign autographs for kids and that kind of thing. And he was all those things as far as what pissed the boys off. He was not a disciplined wrestler. He wasn't really well trained in that sense. I mean, they used to, if you know the business, we'd always say it was like butter. I'm sure you've heard that, Jack, where it's it's smooth. It's like when you shake a wrestler's hand back in the day, they would barely grip it. That's how you tell, it's like butter. And he came in, he was a freaking wrecking ball. And because of the push he was getting, they cut him a lot of slack, the management side of it. Well, when you're in there working and you're feeding a family, you don't want to be in there with some guy who's going to hurt you and put you out of work for a few weeks. So when he would do something like that, one of his stiff clotheslines or miss a spot where he's supposed to be, or an elbow isn't where it's supposed to hit, that pisses a lot of people off. And it kept going on and on. And there was he got a few shots in the ring and backstage to straighten him out. I know Andre the Giant did a pretty damn good job at doing that, but at the same time, you had that, and then there is an envy factor in this, that this guy came in, hadn't, as far as most of the guys were concerned, had not paid his dues by any stretch of the imagination, is getting this tremendous push because he's supposed to be the next Hulk Hogan. And he just zooms to the top of the line. Well, that's going to create resentment. Add to that you didn't come from the business. You don't really understand how it works. You didn't really have to pay the dues on the road like other guys had. Now, of course, when he was there, he had to travel in the same way. But he would be at the arenas and these shows and not interact with the guys. He'd be off somewhere else or have a corner somewhere. We would set it, wouldn't be in the locker room with everybody. And that's not good either. You're separating yourself. These guys were out, and most of the business, you never saw them, at TVs every 3 weeks, but the rest of the time they're at these shows across the country. And at the same time, then he's getting advice from people that probably didn't give him the best advice that he, as far as the business goes, because they didn't get it. They were looking at it from an entertainment point of view and how much you're worth, and they're getting this and you should be getting more. Not a good recipe. On the other side of that, he was a guy who was just bombarded. It was the fire hose of fame and everything else that went with it. Imagine trying to take that all in. And it was, the WWE at the time was massive. It was gigantic. And all he had to do, they played that music, sprint down to the ring, jump on the apron, shake the ropes, and you brought the house down. Well, that's pretty heady. Go in and give a bad clothesline, finish it up, and you're done for the night. The other guys out there, they're doing 12 minutes, right? So, but I had a lot of conversations with him. He was a very intelligent guy, deep, talked about things. We'd be at some events where he would, we had great conversations, great sense of humor, funny. I'd see him on a knee talking to a kid for 20 minutes. Then the next day we're doing something. I don't know what it was, what he was putting into his body, whatever. He wouldn't say 3 words, wouldn't look up from signing stuff. So you never knew what you're really going to get. And so that it's a very complicated person. And that's why to this day, you still have that people, I've done these shows and 90% of the guys are just talking about how they couldn't stand working with a guy. So it was very complicated, but he was, I just think there was a lot of factors involved. And I certainly can't really be in that camp of saying I thought he was terrible. And, I have a little more understanding of what it must have been like for him.
Yeah, fair enough. In terms of the evolution of the product when from your tenure and towards the end, a lot of fans have asked about what it was like to be backstage during the start of the Raw era and the first Monday Night Raw episode, and how truly I want to say how much of a departure that was for the prior product with the Superstars tapings, et cetera, et cetera. So just wanted to get your memories on that, on the first one, in that general atmosphere at that time.
Well, it was certainly different. It was a different concept of how we were going to present our shows. First of all, you had that live element to it. Of course, we'd had live pay-per-views, but to have a weekly show that was live, and as Vince always would say, nothing can go wrong. Well, when it's live, it really can't, because you have to just keep it. The whole thing was you just keep going. You find a way through things. And it was a great place to do it. The Manhattan Center was an intimate arena. And one thing I think they loved about it was the seating was right on top of the ring, basically. So the people were right there. You heard it. You didn't have to put 20,000 people in there to make it sound like it was a mad circus there. So that was something that was different. But I remember thinking overall, like, okay, I don't, it's new, it's different, but I imagine that, going on 30 years that this would be happening. No, I didn't. I love the fact that I'm a trivia question of who's the first frame of that show was me out in front of the Manhattan Center. I loved it because working with Bobby that night was one of my fondest memories ever, of him doing all the different costumes and trying to get into the place, and I'm stopped. I'm getting in the way. It was a masterclass in how great he was at ad-libbing, improving. There was no script for that stuff, folks. That was Bobby just riffing with put a wig on me and off we go. And the fact that I got to be there with him and was able to hang, because I'd worked with him so many times, I knew, and just roll and see where we go with it, was one of my proudest nights there. And I wished I could have done it every week. It was that's when I had the most fun doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, certainly memorable. We've got time for one more fan question. I'd be remiss if I left this one out. Memories of working with Roddy Piper. I always got the sense when you enunciated his name, when you're talking about him in the event center, that you guys had a good rapport. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I love Roddy. Roddy was one of the most interesting people to grace this planet. Whatever he would have done, and he was one of the first to break, into the acting and be legitimate with some of the roles that he took on. People think about Hulk, but Roddy, remember, what was it, Frogtown, or one of those?
Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Hell Comes to Frogtown, and some of those other things. And he was good in those. I mean, he was a good actor, but he was an original. And every time he stepped into that ring, I don't know if he knew what he was going to do, but he knew he was going to pull it off. And he's another guy who, the School of Hard Knocks, man, none came tougher than Roddy. And I think that people did get a little bit of a chance to really see who he was when they did where they had everybody live together, the house. I can't remember the name of the show that they did, but they had Hacksaw and Roddy, and they became like these. Yes, yeah, and you got to see, not only Hacksaw. And Hacksaw's an awesome person. I did the podcast with him, and I love Hacksaw. Always had such a ball with him. He's another natural comedian. But Roddy was a special person, man, and went through a lot, but was always entertaining. And I'll tell you one story that really captures it for me. When they brought me back for, I believe it was the 1000th episode, I think, of Raw, but they had us all in like the Legends locker room. I don't know what the hell I was doing in there, but that's where they had us go. Where and so Joe was there, Laurinaitis, Roddy was there, Sarge was there, Gene was there, and we just had, because we had a lot of hours, we're waiting around to do our stuff. And anyway, I brought one of the things I said it was in St. Louis. And one of the things I wanted to do, I said, if I do it, I want to bring my son. And my son was about 12 at the time. And they said, okay. So I got him a ticket and brought him back there with me. And so he got to go everywhere with me. And he had heard my stories. He was crazy about the WWE at the time. So for him, it was just this wide-eyed experience. We were there for, the whole thing was 24 hours. I think we flew back. And so we went in the locker room. And, Joe's son was an NFL football player, a tremendous NFL football player. And he came to the locker room and had his friends, guys from the team with him. And Joe's like, did you bring your pictures? And he's, it's just, they're signing pictures for my son. But anyway, the top of it was, the best of it was that, Roddy was there, and he was so cool to my son, talking about, your old man doing these interviews with me, and just kept coming over to him and saying, and when we were getting ready to leave for the night, and Roddy had on one of his Hot Rod t-shirts, he took off his t-shirt and he gave it to Kyle. He gave it to my son, and he still has that. He still has that t-shirt, but to me, it just captured who he was and the kind of guy he would give the shirt off his back. That literally, I guess the way it goes. But that's how much he cared about the people that love this business. And he knew my son was crazy about professional wrestling, and knew that he would cherish that. And he has cherished that to this day. And when Roddy passed, it really, my son took it very hard, because after that, he never forgot it. And it was so sad that we lost him, and so many, but I loved Roddy, really did.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the all-time greats.
Yep.
Sean, this has been quite an enjoyable trip down memory lane. Really appreciate your reminiscences. In terms of where fans can find you on social media, and please restate, I know that figure is going to go like hotcakes, as well as your upcoming appearance in the UK.
I hope so. Yeah, folks, you can, there's Primetime Mooney at gmail.com. If you want to drop me a note or something, you can just primetimemooney at gmail.com. Then there's a Primetime X account that you can check into. I check that every once in a while. And and then if you want to check out that action figure, go to hasteltoy.com with the two T's, HASTTEL toy.com. But and I did a podcast, Primetime with Sean Mooney, and I love doing it. I talked to pretty much everybody that was around, and it just got to be too much. I'm a news anchor too, and it was just hard to balance everything out. But I'm not going to be doing that much longer. I'm getting ready to step out from in front of that camera there. But I plan to keep doing stuff. I just haven't quite figured out what part I'm going to go to. But I've thought about maybe bringing the podcast back and doing something a little different with it, more of a Legends feel to it. We're getting and talking more about people's lives that were in the ring and what they do now, and how they went forward. But I'd love to hear from everybody and get their thoughts on what they think. But I'd love to hear from folks. And I am looking forward to going to the UK for the Love of Wrestling convention. I haven't been to one. I don't do a lot of things. I really don't. I get asked all the time, but I just can't get away. And so I'm really looking forward to it. And I love doing this. I loved reaching out and being able to talk to folks like you, Jack, because this it's a great business. I owe my career to it.
Well, I certainly appreciate your time as someone who, believe it or not, definitely modeled my interviewing style after and your approach to doing the live events, etc. on your work. It's been a thrill for me, and I appreciate it greatly. And would encourage all the fans to grab that figure before it's gone, and we'll definitely keep in touch, sir. Thanks again for appearing on the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast.
Enjoyed it.
Well, that's it, fans. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit that notification button, and you won't ever miss great content such as this. Until next time, I'm Jack Kilby. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if at all possible. Would really